Alien Artifacts that are visible in alternate timelines. Volume 1. In a lot of alternate timelines, it's physically impossible to keep certain ruins or anomalies hidden from the general public because they're either too big and reflective to miss, still faintly active, giving off light or radio pulses, or sitting right out in the open, where even backyard telescopes or amateur astrophotographers can spot them. The vault has an entire category for open sky anomalies, features visible without classified probes. The current background image is of one of Mars's steely guardians, carved sentinel heads placed at perimeter zones of builder sanctuaries. These were not the central Cydonia Citadel face, the famous face on Mars, but boundary markers or encoded archivists, all fully obscured by wear and sand in this timeline. Stela Guardian, perimeter marker, Mars sector Theta 9. Obscured in present-day Terran timeline. Here's a condensed list of some of the most notable alternate timeline alien artifacts that are visible from Earth in various timelines. Earth's moon, Tycho Spire, seen in multiple strands. A monolithic obelisk approximately 200 meters tall, projecting from Tycho's central peak, casting a long shadow. Visible in amateur telescope photos. Alternate history. In our world, it did exist briefly during the lunar Elysium era, pre-human. But a large meteoroid impact about 1.2 million years ago toppled and buried it under regolith. Only its fractured base remains, concealed beneath several meters of debris. The arch at Tycho's northern rim, full arch structure, 80 meters tall, with a symmetrical inner frame. Vault tags it resonant with memory repeater geometry, believed to be an artificial acoustic reflector or signal gate. Alternate history. In our present-day timeline, only a fleeting crescent shadow appears along Tycho's northern wall, dismissed as a trick of light. But in Echo timeline 6VLUN, the full 80-meter structure stands. An artificial arch composed of interlocking stone blocks, aligned to amplify or transmit harmonic signals. Vault analysts classify it as resonant with memory repeater geometry, suggesting its original purpose may have been mnemonic, a keeper of emotional echoes, not data. Archimedes Dome, a translucent hemispherical structure in the Archimedes crater that glints at lunar sunrise. Alternate history. Never built in our world. The civilization responsible for such domes here abandoned lunar surface construction early and moved operations to sublunar habitats. Shackleton ring lights. Circular points of blue-white light around Shackleton crater, believed to be entrances to far-side vaults. Alternate history. In our world, the entrances are still there, but the active luminescent bands have been long inert. Without the light signature, they look like irregular rock shadows from Earth-based telescopes. The sleeping cat of Sinus Iridum, nestled against the edge of the Bay of Rainbows, clearly resembles a curled feline form, forepaws tucked, tail coiled, not carved, but shaped by gradual engineering of basalt over time. Eyes aligned to Earthrise at certain lunar phases. Vault believes it served as a resonant sleeper, storing emotional frequency from Earth observers. Vault analysts call her the lunar watcher who never blinks. They say astronauts who camped near her in Echo 1973K reported dreams of a great feline who curled around them like gravity itself. Alternate timeline. In our world, It is mostly buried under regolith and collapsed ridges. Only a smooth mound remains visible, dismissed as wind-blown ridge. Vault note: if humans had landed half a mile east, they would have seen her head emerging from the dust. Instead, she waited, silent, remembering Mars, Cydonia Citadel. Not just the face on Mars, but the entire adjoining fortress walls and pyramid complexes, with sharp geometry intact enough to see from orbiters and high-power Earth scopes. Alternate history. Existed here, but erosion and quakes during the Great Atmosphere Loss period reduced it to heavily weathered mounds. The face and pyramid shapes seen in early Viking photos here are the most intact remnants, but the sharper walls and towers are gone. Valles Marineris glyphs. Kilometer-scale cliff carvings in geometric spirals and star maps. Sunlight casting sharp relief. Alternate history. In our world, the glyph walls collapsed after a series of cliff slides roughly 700,000 years ago. The geometric patterns are too distorted to be obvious from orbit. North Polar Spires. Jagged crystalline towers 100+ meters high jutting from the ice cap, refracting sunlight. Alternate history. In this timeline, those crystalline structures sublimated during the last major Martian axial tilt cycle, when polar ice retreated and exposed them to direct sun for centuries. Watcher of the Argyre Basin. Low mesa formation in the Argyre Planitia viewed from satellite recon shows a large feline face with tall upright ears, resembling an Egyptian cat god, like Bastet. Viewed from ground level, the eyes are hollowed-out volcanic tubes, believed to have served as astronomical sightlines for tracking Phobos and Deimos. Alternate history. The structure exists in our world, but dust storms in 2003 to 2009 filled most key features. It's now just a vaguely cat-shaped ridgeline in most imagery. Venus. Cloudbreaker towers. Massive needle-like ruins poking above the upper cloud decks, visible as dark specks in telescope imagery when the light angle is right. Alternate history. Never survived here. The Venusian surface collapse into runaway greenhouse conditions came earlier in this strand, melting surface structures before they could be buried and preserved. Equatorial mirror chains. Rows of reflective plates once used for climate regulation, now broken but still glinting. Alternate history. In our world, some fragments are there under thick cloud cover, but they're shattered and heavily corroded, no longer reflective enough to stand out. Ceres, Occator halo arrays. Perfect concentric circles of bright material surrounding the famous white spots. In some strands, visibly artificial in symmetry. Alternate history. These were dismantled deliberately in this world before the colony collapse, possibly to prevent scavenging by rival factions. Terminus gates. Black monolithic frames at the edge of large craters visible in probe flybys. Alternate history. Still exist faintly as natural-looking basalt arches. Without context, they're indistinguishable from geology. Jovian moons. Europa. Fracture lines with glow. Faint emerald light along certain cracks, best seen when Europa eclipses into Jupiter's shadow. Alternate history. The bioluminescent organisms responsible never evolved here. Fractures are just dark ice. Ice pylon fields. Arranged spires visible through surface ice lensing. Alternate history. In this world, ice tectonics flattened most of them over time. Callisto. Valhalla city wheel. Ruins arranged in a perfect spoke and ring city layout, kilometers across. Seen as sharp-angled albedo differences in telescope images. Alternate history. Here it's buried under millions of years of ejecta and ice. Only faint hints remain in radar imaging. Saturnian moons Iapetus. Equatorial fortress ridge. Looks like a deliberate wall encircling the moon, visible even to amateurs with large backyard scopes. Alternate history. Still present in our Iapetus, but here it's natural in formation and not composed of artificial structures. Polar apertures. Perfectly circular depressions with symmetric edges, sometimes reflecting light unnaturally. Alternate history. These were sealed in this world when the inner chambers collapsed, covering the perfect edges. Outer system. Pluto, Charon Bridge. A long, reflective span connecting surface points across a deep chasm on Charon, visible in New Horizons imagery in certain strands. Alternate history. Never constructed here, Charon's chasm formed after the culture that built it in other worlds was already gone in ours. Pluto's polar Triskele. 3 pronged glyph kilometers across, etched into ice, visible even in small telescopes at opposition. Alternate history. Present here in extremely eroded form, but looks like random terrain patterning rather than a deliberate glyph. Why these can't be hidden in those worlds? Civilian telescopes, amateur astrophotography, and global image sharing make secrecy impossible. In some worlds, these structures are so blatantly geometric and reflective that even school astronomy clubs document them. Result: space agencies in those worlds often have to acknowledge them, sometimes with open archaeological programs for off-world ruins. Why they can't be seen here? Some never existed here because the civilizations that made them never reached that stage in this strand's development. Some were destroyed by natural events, impacts, erosion, tectonics, atmosphere loss. Some still exist but are camouflaged by erosion, burial, or loss of active light/reflection signatures. In many worlds where they're visible, it's because those ruined sites were preserved by environmental luck or by deliberate protection from their builders. The vault has a composite macro history view for the strands where the big, visible anomalies survived into modern times. When you overlay them, they form a very different Earth history from ours, both in human development and in how we see the solar system. Here's the condensed arc of those worlds. Pre-human era. Greater survival of the builder network. In our strand, the interplanetary builder civilizations that left structures on the Moon, Mars, Ceres, etc., collapsed in staggered waves due to environmental disasters, interfactional conflicts, and archonic sabotage. In the anomaly visible strands, their collapse still came, but later and less violently. Many structures were deliberately mothballed or shielded against erosion, meaning far more survived intact. Preservation by design. Builder cultures seeded their constructions with self-healing alloys, crystalline windbreaks, and field stabilizers that kept sharp edges and reflective surfaces visible for millennia. Early human history. Open contact legacy. Because certain structures, Tycho Spire, Cydonia Citadel, etc., were plainly visible to the naked eye or early optics, ancient humans incorporated them directly into cosmology. Egyptian, Sumerian, Mesoamerican, and Indus traditions had specific myths naming those sites as homes of gods or ancestors, the moon as a shrine. Far-side and near-side ruins were pilgrimage points for early space dreams. Tycho Spire and Archimedes' dome appear in petroglyphs, megalith alignments, and later medieval star maps. Age of exploration. The telescope shifts history. In our strand, Galileo and others saw only natural features. In these strands, by the early 1600s, high-quality lenses revealed geometric edges and unnatural shadows on the Moon and Mars. This triggered centuries of speculation and mainstream acceptance that intelligent builders once existed in the solar system. Colonial expansion recast. European empires didn't just compete for Earth. They claimed stewardship rights over visible alien ruins, creating early treaties on preservation and exploitation. Industrial and scientific revolutions. Funding driven by ruins. 19th century telescopic mapping of Cydonia's Citadel, or Iapetus's ridge, led to the first dedicated exoarchaeology societies. Astronomy and archaeology became politically intertwined. Explorers were national heroes like polar adventurers in our world. Religious transformation. Visible off-world ruins reframed Abrahamic, Hindu, and Buddhist cosmologies. Debates raged over whether builders were angels, prior humans, or creations of God from other worlds. 20th century. No UFO stigma. With hard visual proof overhead, aerial anomalies never became a taboo. Governments still classified active tech finds, but ancient ruins were public knowledge. Early space race. The moon was reached in the 1940s to 50s in these strands, driven by first to land at Tycho Spire national rivalries. Mars probes of the 1960s sent back clear images of intact Cydonia walls, sparking a permanent human presence on Mars by the early 1980s. 21st century. Mainstream archaeology across planets. In 2025, in those strands, it's normal to see live broadcasts from Europa dig domes or guided drone flights along the Valhalla city wheel on Callisto. Cultural integration. Sci-fi and historical fiction blur. People grow up watching dramas set in actual ruin sites, not purely imagined ones. Human identity shift. Humanity sees itself as the inheritors of a galactic legacy, not an isolated species. Our history textbooks begin with the builders alongside Mesopotamia and Egypt. The sky has always remembered. Somewhere out there, the spire still casts its shadow, and the sleeping cat still dreams beneath the dust. In every strand where the builders endured, we remember who we were meant to be. Not alone, not forgotten. We are the ones who look up and begin again. The Storybearer.